There is a belief we grow up with, that power is visible, that decisions happen in public, that money leaves a trail. That is when something important happens, someone is responsible. But that belief only exists where transparency exists, and the moment transparency disappears, so does accountability. Every year, the United States government approves a budget that is partially hidden, not delayed, not summarized, hidden. This is called the black budget, money allocated to programs whose purposes are classified, whose operations are secret, whose outcomes are undisclosed, whose failures are invisible, and whose consequences are rarely traced. It exists for one reason, not secrecy, but insulation, because when actions cannot be seen, they cannot be judged, and when they cannot be judged, they cannot be challenged. This is how power becomes untouchable, not through force, through distance. The black budget does not fund one thing, it funds a culture where decisions are made without public consent, where harm can be classified, where mistakes can be buried, where patterns can form without scrutiny, and where those patterns can repeat without interruption. This is how the same structure shows up in different forms, first in political movements, then in drug policy, then in surveillance, then in foreign operations. Different names, same logic: allow harm, observe harm, manage harm, claim credit for reducing harm, never acknowledge creating the conditions for it, and never face consequences for allowing it. This is not a failure of individuals, it is a success of systems, because the system is not designed to prevent harm, it is designed to preserve authority. And authority is preserved not by being right, but by being unquestionable. Secrecy creates that unquestionability. When people cannot see what is done in their name, they cannot consent. When they cannot consent, they cannot object. And when they cannot object, they become governed, not represented. So when a crisis appears, it is never treated as a symptom. It is treated as a resource, a justification, a narrative, a funding opportunity, a political lever, a reason to expand, a reason to intervene, a reason to centralize power. And once that power is expanded, it rarely returns. The pattern is not malicious, it is efficient. It is not loud, it is procedural. It does not need enemies, it only needs permission. And when permission is hidden, it doesn't even need that. This is why harm can be allowed. Because harm is not the system's failure, harm is the system's input. It generates urgency, it generates authority, it generates compliance, and it generates the conditions under which control feels necessary. So the system does not ask, how do we prevent this? It asks, how do we manage this? How do we contain this? How do we benefit from this? How do we survive this? Not as people, but as institutions. And that is the quiet truth beneath all three stories. Not that chaos is created, but that chaos is useful. Not that harm is desired, but that harm is tolerated. Not that injustice is intended, but that injustice is acceptable when it is profitable, stabilizing, or politically convenient. And as long as those incentives remain, it's slow. The pattern does not end. It only changes shape.